these people smugglers, these horrific criminals themselves, force the people into the boats and take them across the Mediterranean. And some argue, and I don't dispute that the Mediterranean is probably one of the largest graves around, because many of these boats capsize, and of course you'll never find the bodies again. Now, it's a little hard for me as a mother to argue. I don't think I would step onto one of those boats, and I really don't think I would. On the other hand, you know, mothers with children are desperate, but it's not mothers with children coming across. It's fighting age men, and you see that here too. So we're in this together.
That's right.
Okay, so my appeal is to you, just as it is to the Europeans, to the European politicians, close the damn border. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country, right? And Europe is changing, the United States is changing, and unfortunately, it's not changing for the better. I'd also like to talk to you about the problems that we're seeing. Well, actually not the problems, it's outrageous what we're seeing. That right-wing extremism is now being weaponized. I mean, there's no right-wing extremism that I know of, that I see in Europe. Okay, I'm probably more right than center, because to me, center means you're a little bit of nothing. So I do stand to the right, and I'm on the right side of history in my belief. But a very, very well-known German, what was he? Constitution. He was the leader of the German Office for the Protection of the Constitution. His name is Hans-Georg Maaßen. He was actually kicked out by Angela Merkel, and a very good man. He said the following, and I completely concur with him. The divide is not between good and evil, left and right, but between those who deliberately advocate a neo-socialist society that potentially slides into totalitarianism, and in which people are told how to live, speak, work, and heat their homes, and those who opt for freedom, the rule of law, and the basic order of the Constitution. And I think you would agree with that. This man is being vilified right now in Germany. He's being called all sorts of slurs, but he's speaking the truth. And like myself, I couldn't care less about being vilified. I don't care. All I need to be able to do is look myself in the mirror in the morning, and I need my family, my husband, and my daughter to love me.
Amen.
That's all I need. I don't care what people think about me, and neither should you.
Amen.
Conservative parties, in my view, are not really the solution. Because today's conservative parties are variants of socialist parties. Just think of Nikki Haley. Today's conservative parties, and I'm speaking mostly European politics right now because it's not my place to say too much about American politics, but today's conservative parties are responsible for the migration catastrophe, for the disastrous education policies, family and economic policies, but above all, they are responsible for the erosion of the rule of law and democracy, for the exclusion and political discrimination of those who think differently. Sound familiar? We're seeing the same thing in Europe. Okay? We have only one thing going against us. We do not have a First Amendment, and we certainly do not have a Second Amendment. So you're still luckier than we are, and you still have it going for you. Let me tell you what's going on in Germany, because this will also sound very familiar, especially when you think of President Trump. The former German Democratic Republic, the Republic's founding politician, Walter Ulbricht, once said, "We must look democratic, but we must also have everything under control." Right? Sounds very familiar? That was the German Democratic Republic. and it even had the word democratic in its name. There was nothing democratic about the GDR. Now the GDR is gone, but today's rulers are doing everything in their power to reestablish pseudo-democracy in the West, just like the GDR did. Anti-democratic measures, according to these people, are necessary to protect us from the threat posed from the right. Think COVID measures. These anti-democratic measures were necessary to protect us from this horrific virus that is killing millions of people. Not really. So why is this happening right now in Germany? And it's a Germany that resembles Germany in 1933. If you know your history, and I do know history very well, it is so eerily similar to what happened in 1933. Because Hitler's Germany was also democratic. It was just a pseudo-democratic country, state. So current politicians, the government has three parties. It's made up of three parties. And the current politicians in that coalition are terrified of losing power. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
So they will use all tools to keep hold of power, including the suspension of democracy. Sound familiar?
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
So, however, a clear majority of voters in Germany demand mild nationalism. Of course, because we want Germany to remain Germany. We want Austria to remain Austria. What's so bad about nationalism? I don't see the problem. So this is the purpose of the agitation that we're now seeing in Germany, but also not only in Germany, but also in Austria. And this agitation is against the right. It doesn't matter if you call them extreme right or just right, it's everything on the right. And the protests against the right have thus far not been successful enough in destroying the support for the German party Alternative for Germany. You might have heard of that party. If you haven't, look it up, because it will be in the news more and more as the year progresses. It's a party, it's a relatively new party, and it's a party, of course, on the political right. It's not without its own problems, but it's the only party that currently, for people like us, can be voted for. So, because the government has not been successful in turning the protests into destroying support for the AfD, they have turned this into a license to take action against the right. Now, let me tell you the chilling measures that are being discussed right now, and this was announced in an official Ministry of Interior paper, and it was presented by the German Minister of Interior, plus the current head of the Office for the Protection of the Constitution. Listen to this, and you will feel a lot of chill in this room. And there's no AC, so you'll feel it anyway. So I'm quoting verbatim. The aim of the right-wing extremists is to abolish liberal democracy to their national and reshape our society according to their nationalist, racist, and anti-pluralist ideas. There's a tendency of right-wing extremists to dress up and camouflage themselves. They must be unmasked and exposed as enemies of our democracy. Sound familiar?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Right-wing extremism should be viewed as embracing non-establishment politics and ideology to these people, i.e. people like us, is no longer relevant. Now comes the worst part. According to this paper, there's a shifting, and I quote, verbal and mental boundary, and not only the willingness to use force. They're going into your head. They want your thoughts. We must be careful not to allow such thought and speech patterns to become part of our language. This is Germany 2024. This is not Germany 1933. This is a new devil. The summary of the plans of the German government. Right-wing extremists are nebulous and difficult to identify population. of political subverts, difficult to identify the population who must be unmasked by the police. This is necessary to control prevailing thought and speech patterns. Once identified, they are to be punished for their mockery and deprived of income and bank accounts. Names are to be published for harassment by the state and Antifa-like organizations, and they are to be prevented from crossing borders and association. The goal here is to neuter political opposition, and it's not to hound zombie Nazis. There are no Nazis in Germany. Okay? It's just wishful thinking. It's just a mirage. Okay? Look, we have problems here with the government, with what we're doing. We're low in the polls, but look over there, the Nazi. Sound familiar?
Yes.
It's the same thing. We cannot let it stand. Okay? And don't think you're not at risk. You may say you are a pluralist liberal, but who cares at the end of the day? You say something that may not be, that me? Oh God. Okay, forget that. We're gonna rally the troops, okay?
Amen.
You wanna know what you can do?
Yes.
First of all, something that I realized today, you're not alone. You're not helpless because your freedom is baked into your DNA. Like I said at the beginning, somehow your freedom made it into my DNA. I deeply admire that, and I'm grateful that some of this was passed to me in my education in Chicago. Cut off the blood supply to all businesses that hire DEI personnel. You have choices. Depend on the talent in your local communities. Write emails and letters, make phone calls. You all are already doing that. Attend school board meetings, political strategizing groups like this one. Vote and tell your friends to vote. Give your input. There's no excuse to vote. Your vote. And EV wouldn't make this noise. Your vote doesn't make a difference. There's no excuse not to vote. Demand voter ID. And for once, look to Europe, because in Europe, elections are still sound. I might be able to tell you more at the end of the year when I see you a year from now, because we will have our general elections in Austria at the end of September, so let's see what happens. But for now, European elections are still sound. Challenge orthodoxies. Become a skeptic. Challenging orthodoxies has become one of the greatest taboos of recent times. Critical thinking is frequently equated with conspiracy theory, pointing out the obvious, that a man can't be a woman, that 2 + 2 = 5 can easily lead to legal and other reprisals. It's chilling to have to self-censor. Ask yourself how often you're self-censoring already. You should not be self-censoring. You're Americans. That is exactly my point. Be an independent and critical thinker. Don't be an American in name only. Be an American. And my final words, in this land of the free and home of the brave, you must be brave to be free. Don't you ever get used to freedom. It is a blessing. Treat it as such.
Yes.
I know what it is like not to be free. And only when you're no longer free do you realize how precious freedom is. Never give in, never give up, and God bless America. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you so much. If you want to buy a book, please see me or Petra. The book is $20. We take cash or check. The proceeds of the book go towards my next trip to the United States to tell you all, what's going on in Europe. If you want to book me for a speaking engagement, I would love to do that, especially Turning Point USA. Got my sights on you. But I would like to speak everywhere, anywhere. Please talk to me after that, or talk to Petra. She is my go-to woman here in the Orlando area. I would love to speak And thank you for coming, and have a great weekend. I'll just bury myself and cry now. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your prayers. They really helped, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to stand here today. Thank you so much for giving me the time. Yes, wonderful.
We're way over time. Is there an announcement that somebody needs to make? We're not doing commentary, but just announcements. We'll talk with that.
Yeah, okay, what,